Vale, a ver, siempre corriendo, siempre corriendo. Bueno, estoy por las oficinas, pero me tengo que ir corriendo ahora mismo. Ay, 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 ay. Es que están en obras, estamos en obras. Que me voy a entrevistar a James Gray. Que soy muy fan, soy muy fan de James Gray. O sea, tú lo ves, me parece una de las mejores películas de la historia del cine, pero también obviamente ha hecho The Yards, también ha hecho La noche es nuestra, que es increíble, La noche es nuestra, La ciudad perdida de Z. O sea, que soy muy fan. Además, he hecho algo muy loco, muy raro, que no se suele hacer en las entrevistas, y es que he pedido que me sienten con él. O sea, en vez de estar plano contra plano, estaremos en el mismo plano, con lo cual, pero no cagarla, porque digamos que eso, tienes una oportunidad y lo tienes que hacer bien, y lo tienes que hacer en inglés. ¿Vale? Bueno, vale, me gustó mi camiseta Kieslowski. Vamos a por James. You have two movies of explorers in a row, in the jungle, in the space, and it's very different from your urban movies, no? Very different about the environment where it happens. Why is this change?
That was not intentional. What happens is that you make the films when you get the money, you know. This was written in 2011, but it just so happened that I made them back to back, and it's weird because one seems to comment on the other. That was not intentional, but maybe it was in some unconscious way. I had made a bunch of movies in New York, and I guess I felt it was time to try other things. I had become very interested in the idea of exploration, and the explorers came from Europe to the New World, but also in their motive. And I guess what happened was I became obsessed with the idea that we explore for noble, but also not so noble reasons.
Uh-huh.
So I don't know. I one's the sort of flip side to the other, isn't it? One's the son looks for the father, the other one's the father goes and then eventually brings the son. So it's weird. I guess it does work out that way.
In the watching the Lost City of Set, of course, I thought in Joseph Conrad.
Yeah, of course.
I thought in Werner Herzog, and that happens again with Conrad. Watching Ad Astra, and the Tommy Lee Jones character is real Colonel Kurtz. It feels a look-alike Colonel Kurtz. That was intentionate.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of Conrad. I'm a big fan of Apocalypse Now. It's interesting. In the late 1960s, Francis Coppola and George Lucas, who were very close, were very interested in myth and Joseph Campbell and studying myth, the idea of myth in cinema. And George Lucas, weirdly, was supposed to direct Apocalypse Now. George Lucas, of course, went on to do the Star Wars movies, which are so mythic and almost stealing directly from Joseph Campbell. But if you watch Apocalypse Now, it has a tremendous sense of myth.
Uh-huh.
And we wound up being influenced by Apocalypse Now really only because we decided, let's tell the Odyssey, but from Telemachus's point of view. And then you realize you're doing the same thing. You're trying to make this mythic story, the same thing that George Lucas and, of course, Francis Coppola did, which, of course, then harkens back to the Conrad. It's all connected.
This movie has something really amazing, that it's like, at the same time, epic and minimalist.
Yeah.
The travel of the main character, Roy McBride, is transcendental.
Yeah.
Me ha quedado regular. I read a review from Venice who compares the work with Terrence Malick, but I like the sentence that says, while Terrence Malick puts in the position of God, you are in the position of the human being.
That's interesting. You know, people who write about the work oftentimes are much smarter than I am. That's much better than I could come up with. We were trying to be as intimate as possible. I love Terrence Malick's work, but I wasn't trying to steal from him. We were trying to do something that was directly personal, that was almost like a internal monologue, that was like a diary. You know, we were trying to do something that we felt to try and break down the wall between the actor and the film, the character and the actor, that it was simply the most direct expression of emotion that we could get at. And the voiceover, which is probably the Terrence Malick reference, was really meant only so that we could have total access into Brad.
And do you think that your cinema has become more literally from literature?
More. I don't know. Not consciously so, but maybe. You know, it's funny, I read less fiction now than I used to. I used to read a lot, but now since I've had children, so my wife had children, she deserves the credit. But since my children were born, I'll say that, I've been reading very little fiction. I've been reading a lot of nonfiction. So maybe when you try to be personal, a lot of being personal is reminiscing. And maybe in the reminiscence is the literary. Because now I read a lot of nonfiction, not fiction. To me, history has excellent stories. As Ad Astra has this component, really big component of metaphysical outer space, you will have to handle comparisons with 2001, with Solaris. Yeah, it's funny you say that because I love those movies. 2001 for me is, one of the greatest films ever made. But I don't really see, beyond a kind of semi-realistic approach to the future, that movie is about like aliens and black monoliths appearing in front of prehistoric man. Like, I don't see a story similarity at all. I think it has to do with, honestly, just the treatment of what we think the future might hold, which is to say, not fantasy, that it has some grounding. Much as I love it, I tried to steal from it, not at all. I tried to steal from Solaris, not at all. Both of those films deal with alien force, alien intelligence, and we were trying to do the opposite. What can you do? Everyone's always comparing every movie to every other movie, so the only thing you can do is embrace it. Okay, let's talk about the action the scenes, which are awesome. It's like three really... Are there three?
The beginning...
Yeah.
The monkeys,
the
and the moon chase.
He climbs up a rocket.
And
it also flies through the rings of a planet. A lot of stuff going on.
It's a lot of action that makes suspense, thrilling, and the use of sound is amazing. It's amazing how you use the sound in these sequences. How was doing it? Was thrilling? Was challenging? Because it's like the best action movies in your career, probably.
Well, thank you. I like thinking them up, I like designing them, and I like the result. I hate shooting them. It's so boring. Shooting a scene where you have, let's say you have Brad and Tommy Lee Jones or something like that in a scene, that's exciting for me, doing that. I can see the way they interact and listen to each other. That's beautiful. When you do an action scene, it's literally like this. You put the camera like this and you say, okay, Brad, look surprised. Cut. You know what I mean? And then you have to piece it together. It's made in the editing room. The actual shooting is really quite dull. You've planned it all beforehand. So the preparation is great. The result is great. It's the shooting that's not so exciting. The sound is a different issue. The sound is great. I worked with a guy named Tom Johnson, another guy named Gary Rydstrom, at Skywalker Sound in Northern California, and they're the greatest. And they have tremendous creative input, and my only talent has to be that I will embrace their good ideas. They're the ones that bring the beautiful work to that. And there you can hear it as it's happening. It's such a great process because you see the sequence come to life really with the sound.
A ver, es que ha pasado una cosa súper chula, pero han dejado de grabar la entrevista y James Gray me seguía hablando del sonido de la peli y ha sido una pena, porque claro, te la cortan. Y me ha dicho algo muy chulo y entonces quería que esto quedara grabado. Y es que me ha dicho que cuando veáis a Astra, ya veréis que al principio de la peli hay como un reverb, hay como un... que se repite a lo largo de la película, ¿no? Así. Y lo que me ha dicho es que lo que hizo fue poner el loop y en diferentes capas, a diferentes velocidades, sobre todo en cámara lenta, a Tommy Lee Jones diciendo I love you my son. Tommy Lee Jones dirá I love you my son, ¿no? En diferentes capas, en slow motion, acumulando, y entonces eso suena como... buenísimo. Vale, ya está, ya está. Hemos hablado mucho, estoy muy feliz ahora mismo. Venga, un beso.
La Tierra confió en él. Ahora confía en su destino. En mí.
Tenemos un trabajo. ¿Estás preparado?
Lo estoy.